that the go through the phones and get more facts. And there has been over the last couple of days just a ton of pressure from the media. Almost every news media station in America has picked this story up. So they did come back out, the investigators, to my father's house a couple of days ago, to try to get the provider like AT&T or Verizon information, telephone number, whatever they were going to need to sort of take a harder look at it. But they haven't, made any moves to have prosecution.
That was Joshua Smith, brother of Channing Smith, a 16-year-old student in Tennessee who took his own life after he discovered some explicit material has been shared online by his friends. And we have contacted his school for comment, but it's fall break, so we haven't heard back yet. The school's principal has told other US media outlets that an announcement was made on the school loudspeaker and grief counselors are available. That's Principal Paul Parsley. He said that he had expressed his sadness over Channing's death and he let the school community know. He defended his handling of the situation, explaining that that was due to the ongoing investigation involving several of his students and that he could not comment in more detail. And if you want support on bullying, LGBT issues, bereavement, you could go to the bbc.com website and type /action line. Divya Arya with you on OS from the BBC World Service. We're live from the middle of the newsroom in London. Let's take a look at some stories from the world of technology. The messaging app WhatsApp are testing out disappearing messages in a bid to improve safety and privacy whilst sending sensitive information. Currently, the messages are only being trialed and are available solely in group chats where they can be set out to self-destruct in 5 seconds or an hour. Apple has introduced a new system which will stop you fixing your broken iPhone with unofficial parts. If you fit a non-Apple screen onto one of the newest iPhones, you'll be shown an alert saying, "Unable to verify that this iPhone has a genuine Apple display." And GoPro's new flagship action camera is designed to connect to a new range of hardware add-ons targeted at video bloggers. GoPro remains the best-selling action cam brand in much of the world, but experts suggest that other improvements are relatively minor, meaning the Hero 8 Black may be a tough sell. And now, for all the sport, we have Betty Glover.
Hello, European giants Bayern Munich, Juventus and Real Madrid are all in Champions League action later. There are 8 fixtures taking place across the continent on match day 2 of the group stages, but these are the ones that are particularly eye-catching. We'll start with Tottenham. They play German Bundesliga champions Bayern Munich. Spurs, of course, finalists last year, losing to Liverpool in that all-English final, but they've only won 3 of their Premier League matches this season. Bayern are perhaps going through a transitional phase. They've brought in the talents of Philippe Coutinho, Ivan Perisic and Lucas Hernandez. Now, Manchester City take on Dynamo Zagreb and they'll have to do without playmaker Kevin De Bruyne. The midfielder is out with a groin injury. Dynamo are top of Group C, with Manchester City second after their opening matches. Spain's 13-time Champions League winners Real Madrid are about to kick off against Club Brugge. Now, this is a game they are expected to win, but you just never know with this Real Madrid team. They're looking to get their campaign back on track at the Bernabeu. You may remember they were thrashed 3-0 by PSG in Paris in their first match in the competition. And Juventus are aiming for their first win of this group stage, taking on another German side in Bayer Leverkusen. Juve opened up their Champions League account this season with a 2-2 draw at Atletico Madrid.
Thanks, Betty. And at this time on OS at the moment, we are also taking you live to the World Athletics Championships in Qatar's capital, Doha. The BBC's Ed Harry has been joining us and helping us watch the events from here. So, Ed, what's been happening?
Big final coming up tonight. It features an American by the name of Noah Lyles. He's, I suppose, still something of a best-kept secret in terms of people within the sport know about this young sprinter, but this could be the real breakthrough tonight. His first global senior title. He's the 4th quickest man of all time in the 200. He keeps teasing people that he is aiming at Usain Bolt's world record. That will be a phenomenal performance tonight, about a third of a second would have to come off his best, but he's a huge favourite for the 200. He has Andre de Grasse, the Olympic silver medalist in the race, who got a bronze the other night in the 100 metres. And this could be the night that he announces himself, if you like, on a much bigger stage, Lyles. He's got that sort of Bolt-like temperament, and I think people are going to get to know that name on the road to the Tokyo Olympics. But first of all, he has to win here.
Right. And have the home nation, Qatar, won any medals yet?
Yes, remember this time yesterday we were talking about Abdurrahman Samba, who was a strong favourite not just to get a medal but to win the 400 hurdles. Unfortunately for Samba, it's been an injury-disrupted season. Nevertheless, he still won a bronze medal here last night, and many of the Qatari contingent, the Qatari members of the crowd, stayed for that race. Earlier we'd had those noisy Ethiopians in their droves cheering some big East African performances. Bronze medal for Samba in a race won by Karsten Warholm from Norway, who was the defending champion. And it's been a good 24 hours for Qatar as well. Their high jumper, Mutaz Barshim, is the only defending world champion from Qatar at these Worlds, at his home World Championships. But he damaged ligaments last year, jumping what would have been a world record. And he thought he might never jump again 11, 12 months ago, but he qualified for the high jump final later this week. He sailed through qualifying. He really did sail. No, not once did the bar come off, and huge hopes for him in that high jump final. And also another note on Qatar's progress, a young 400 hurdler called Mariam Farid raced here this evening. She finished way after everybody else, but she was, as a young teenager, the young girl who spoke when Qatar won this bid, when they went to Monaco to speak to the IAAF in 2014. Her words helped bring the championship here. She's since become an elite athlete, and she competed in the championship here this evening, and plenty of cheers for her, plenty of Qataris with their phones out to mark that moment.
Ah, lovely. Thank you, Ed, from Qatar, from Doha in Qatar. And moving on, we spoke in our program yesterday about a fire which broke out at a refugee camp on the Greek island of Lesbos in northern Greece. At least one person has died, and migrants have been protesting since. Overcrowding and general conditions in the camp have been in the news. We can now talk to Franziska Grillmeier. She's a freelance journalist and currently on the Lesbos story. Franziska, what is the situation today? What do we know till now?
Hi there. So, I mean, at the moment, it's still the case that only one death was reported, but a lot of asylum seekers and inhabitants from Moria tell me that they saw many more deaths. There is a lot of misinformation circling around in the camp that is highly overcrowded. People are very much at unease. They started sleeping outside the main camp. Some of them carried their things and belongings outside. Some of them started to protest. There was a big protest yesterday, mainly organized by women, chanting, "We want security." Today, a big group between 300 and 400 people tried to move towards the port town of Mytilene, but were stopped half the way from the police and demanding safety and freedom.
Thanks, Franziska, for that update about the refugee camp in Lesbos. And we had spoken earlier about those protests in Hong Kong. Thousands of people have turned up in the streets, defying that protest ban for the 70th anniversary of communist rule in China. The protest turned violent, and one activist was shot in the chest during clashes between police and protesters. A little earlier, we tried to go live to the news conference being done by Stephen Lo Wai Chung, the Commissioner of Hong Kong Police. Now we've got a part where he was talking about the protester who was shot today.
The 18-year-old male was sent to hospital. When he was sent to hospital, he's still conscious. At the moment, I believe the doctors are conducting examination and cure him at the moment. So I do not know the current situation. Maybe the hospital may give you more information. At this moment, he was arrested for assaulting police officer. We will conduct further inquiries, and then once after the inquiries, we will decide whether we will press charge or not. And lastly, today, I'm set. Our National Day is supposed to be a day to celebrate and be happy. But unfortunately, some rioters choose to do all these all these sorts of criminal damages, arsons, woundings, assaulting police officer, and various behavior which are more or less equivalent to a riot offense, almost demonstrating to the whole world that we are supposed to be proud of. Hong Kong is a safe city. That today is really sad for me. It is already over 110 days already. Our officers are doing their job wholeheartedly every day, over 15 hours every day, committing themselves to protect the city and protect the life and property of the Hong Kong citizen. We are in a difficult moment, but we will remain steadfast and we will committed to our duty to protect everyone in the society.
That was Stephen Lo Wai Chung, the Commissioner of Hong Kong Police, explaining their perspective on that violent protests, on the violent protests that we've been witnessing, but specifically to that incident where one person was allegedly shot in the chest today by the police. We've seen really dramatic pictures come out of Hong Kong throughout the day today. Their protests have been taking place, while very different pictures emerging out of Beijing in China, where 70 years of communist rule were being celebrated. There was a massive military parade. The president spoke of unity. He spoke of the might of China, and you can get all those updates on our website bbc.co.uk/news. As we end the program, there's also some breaking news coming in from Iraq. The government has issued a statement saying one person has been killed and 200 injured in clashes between demonstrators and police. To get the latest, keep tuned in to BBC World Service, where they will be shared as they come in. Thank you for joining OS.
This is the BBC World Service, and here's what World Book Club have been reading.
The book is called Oblivion, a son's account of his father's life and murder in 1987 by right-wing Colombian paramilitaries.
It's my written revenge in some ways, but it's a peaceful revenge.
It's by the award-winning author Hector Abad.
World Book Club, Sunday at 13 GMT. And at bbcworldservice.com, more or less.
We look at two numerical claims about wars. Were a third of those that fought for the British Army in World War I of black or Asian descent? And did black men really fight for Confederacy in the American Civil War?
This is the BBC World Service, the world's radio station.
Hello, welcome to Outlook. Today, the rising opera star from Port Elizabeth in South Africa, who taught herself how to sing by copying divas on DVDs.
I watched and trained myself kinda and tried to see how they formed sound, and so I just mimicked everything, how they did the vowels and everything, because it was a different language, so I wanted to make sure that I did it the correct way.
Also coming up, what are octopus dreams made of?
As she's sleeping, the color patterns that she's displaying are just flashing and changing somewhat continuously. And the color patterns were reminiscent of those that you see when an octopus stalks and catches a crab. And so I sort of imagine, just as you might with a dog, that she's dreaming of chasing her favorite food.
More from the man who lived with an octopus after this.
BBC News with Sue Montgomery. Hong Kong police have said an officer who shot an 18-year-old protester was protecting the lives of himself and his colleagues. Stephen Lo Wai Chung is the territory's police commissioner.
At this moment, he was arrested for assaulting police officer. We will conduct further inquiries, and then once after the inquiries, we will decide whether we will press charge or not.
The teenager, who's being treated in hospital, was wounded during some of the worst violence in 4 months of pro-democracy protests. More than 50 people have been hospitalized. Police fired tear gas and water cannon. The protesters set fires, attacked officers and damaged public buildings. The unrest was in stark contrast to celebrations in Beijing, where there was a major parade to mark 7 decades of Communist Party rule in China. The United States Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has accused a congressional committee of trying his employees improperly. The comments are linked into the impeachment inquiry against President Trump. Gary O'Donoghue reports.
Last Friday, Democrat-controlled committees on Capitol Hill issued a subpoena to the Secretary of State for documents relating to the Ukraine inquiry. At the same time, 5 people, including the former US ambassador to Ukraine and President Trump's special envoy to the country, were asked to make depositions behind closed doors in the coming week. Now, Mike Pompeo has accused Democrats of attempting to intimidate and bully State Department employees. Democrats are determined to keep up the momentum. Republicans and the Trump administration want to slow things right down.
The most prominent reformer in Ukraine's government has told the BBC he's quitting because of the growing influence of a controversial billionaire. Alexander Danylyuk is stepping down as the president's national security advisor. From Kiev, Jonah Fisher.
Seeing Alexander Danylyuk at the side of Ukraine's president reassured international donors. Mr. Danyluk's reputation as a reformer helped convince them that the former comedian was serious about tackling corruption, and crucially, that he wasn't being controlled by his former business partner, the controversial and much investigated billionaire Igor Kolomoisky. By resigning, Mr. Danylyuk said he was hoping to raise the alarm about the growing influence of those connected to the oligarch.
Vatican police have seized documents and electronic equipment from the offices of the Secretary of State and the Holy See's Financial Information Authority. A statement said the raid was linked to complaints made by the Institute for Works of Religion and the Office of the General Auditor. An unnamed senior Vatican source was quoted as attributing the police operation to real estate deals. The powerful secretariat serves as the nerve centre of the Vatican bureaucracy. BBC News. The UN Refugee Agency says the number of migrants dying in the Mediterranean in 2019 has exceeded 1,000, the 6th year in a row this number. Crowded camps on 3 islands. One camp, the Moria Centre on Lesbos, was designed for 2,000 people, but now holds 12,600. Scientists have worked out the total amount of carbon on Earth, a discovery which they say will have implications for everything, from understanding where life can exist to forecasting volcanic eruptions. The study has taken 10 years to complete. It estimates that our planet contains 1.8 billion tons of carbon. Almost all of it is held beneath the surface of the Earth. The US Justice Department says the country's Drug Enforcement Administration allowed pharmaceutical companies to substantially increase the pain-killing tablets they made each year, despite growing evidence that opioids were being overprescribed. Deaths from opioid